most people put themselves in a box, doing only what the people did in your industry that came before you. The vast majority simply copied the generation prior, and so everybody ends up doing the same things. When there's no differentiation, the only thing you can compete on is price, and it's a race to the bottom.
Welcome to the Masters of Business podcast with Daniel Beer.
And welcome back to Masters of Business podcast. I'm Dan Beer, and I just have to say thank you. Thank you for the growth that our podcast is experiencing. We are so thrilled to be bringing value. And today, I am going to bring 4 laws that I believe determine a great deal of success. And there's a lot of principles out there that we can live by, guide our businesses through. I'm giving you 4 of them today so we could break down all that's available to us into these 4 bite-sized chunks that we can focus on. And in a future episode, I'll bring you more. So the first law of great success, of mastering business, if you look at what people out there are doing that stand out from the crowd, is they do not play by rules that don't exist. See, most people put themselves in a box that is self-made. It's self-created. And so you start doing only what the people did in your industry that came before you. But guess what? The vast majority of them simply copied the generation prior, and that's that same cycle over and over and over. And so everybody ends up doing the same things, sounding the same, presenting the same, and there's no differentiation. And when there's no differentiation, the only thing you can compete on is price, and it's a race to the bottom. And so I just want you to understand, because I know that last point, you get that. But why does that happen? Why is there always that race to the bottom in virtually any industry, but yet there's a few that just stand out there that seem to be able to do what nobody else can do? It's because they don't play by rules that don't exist. I'll give you an example from my industry, but please apply it to yours. As an example, in the real estate industry, most real estate agents put out their open house signs, maybe 5 or 6 of them, about 5 minutes before the open house starts. And so they run out there, they put out some signs, they rush back to the home, they're sweating out of their armpits, and they think that's somehow going to help them sell this property. And so it's no wonder that even the National Association of Realtors has stated through their studies that only 4% of sales happen through open house. Well, no kidding. Look at the amateur way in which it's done. So what if instead of putting out, or better said, right? If you didn't play by these rules that literally don't exist. There's no rule that says you can only have 5 or 6 signs. There's no rule that says the signs can only go out 5 minutes prior to the open house starting, typically at about 12:55 prior to a 1 o'clock open house, typically on a Saturday or a Sunday. So everyone just does the same things, but these are not rules. Now, before you get all riled up, I get it. I'm probably picking out a perfect example because there are, in some municipalities, sign ordinances, and so there are maybe it's a rule where you're located, but get out of that for a moment. Just realize that I am talking about something you can use as an example. And in San Diego, where I live, most areas don't have a sign ordinance, yet everyone still does the same thing. They're playing by rules that don't exist. But what if instead of doing 5 or 6 signs, you did 60? Yeah, 60. What if instead of putting out the signs 5 minutes prior, rushing back to the home looking ridiculous, sweating out of their suit, a real estate agent were to put the signs out at 9 a.m. so that the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock traffic that never sees an open house sign saw yours, showed up to the house, and you pushed disproportionate traffic to the property? What if you had a sign at the property that said showing today 1 to 4, so that crowd that came at 9, 10, 11 o'clock didn't knock on the door and disturb the seller, but knew that they could go to breakfast and they could come back. And so you had captured traffic no other agent is capturing. Are they all going to come back? Of course not. But what if you got 10 extra people to show up at that open house, creating more perceived competition to the people that end up showing up during the traditional quote-unquote hours? Playing by rules that don't exist creates an environment where if in a city there's 100 open houses going on, 99 of them look the same, but one of them really stands out. But not only that, but if you think about it in business, when you have a differentiated strategy, it then translates into a story, whether it's in your sales presentation, which even just what I said to you now is exactly like what I would have said to a homeowner in their kitchen, at their kitchen table. And so the simple act of not doing the 5 or 6 signs 5 minutes prior, not only is it actually more effective to do it differently, but it also gives you a differentiated message when speaking, selling, creating ads, all that from just simply not playing by rules that don't exist. So in your industry, what is everybody doing? They're all following as if it were an ordinance from the city or a mandate from God even, but it's really not. It's self-imposed. And the lack of creativity that follows, and that if somebody in your industry were to break through that, challenge the norms, would immediately find a differentiated position in the marketplace. And that takes us right to number 2, okay? The second principle that is so critical, everything we've been talking about, so critical because money flows to different. Money flows to different. We just stated a little bit ago that when everyone's doing the same things, acting the same, right, there's a race to the bottom. And that's always on price. But that's because there's only so much money in the world and it flows to what is different. See, safe equals poor. Safe, the safe play equals poor. Different equals the abundance that you're looking for. Now, you have to make sure you have a message to market match, of course. Okay, if you're going to pursue a different message, then make sure that it's not just at random. It's not just something you dreamed up, some wild thing, but rather that there is a message to market match, and that is critically important. But when you have a message to market match that's differentiated from everybody else, all of a sudden the consumer gets the option, and this is the same thing in B2B, by the way, gets the option, let's just call them the buyer then, of dealing with everybody else or you. And you stand all of a sudden in an ocean of your own. If you've read the book, Blue Ocean Strategy, great book, it talks about getting out of those red bloody waters where everyone's fighting for the same exact customer with the same message. So they have to go, again, driving price down, driving margins down, and margins are tough to come by, aren't they? Yet some get to seem like they can just dictate price. And it's because money flows to different. They have a differentiated message and they have a message to market match. Just remember something, that the biggest marketer in most any industry, the biggest marketer wins. But really we should say the most effective, the biggest and most effective marketer wins. And by the way, if you're in a commoditized industry, for example, being a real estate agent where I come from, if you're in a commoditized industry like selling peanuts, selling paper, selling chairs, right? If you're in a commoditized industry, then even more so the biggest marketer wins. There's a reason that Kleenex is what we all say when it's tissue paper, right? Well, that's a commodity. I mean, one tissue paper versus the other. But there's one big marketer in the space, and that's Kleenex. So what is that in your industry? How can you take advantage of this principle? The third is to stop asking how. Ask what, ask why, ask who, but do not any longer worry about the how. See, how becomes somebody else's job. What your job is as the business leader, as the entrepreneur, as the founder, as the CEO, your job is to answer very consistently, what do we want to accomplish? Why do we want to accomplish it? And who is going to do it? And when you answer who, and they understand the what and the why, they bring the how. When you get wrapped up in doing the how, let me tell you, it becomes a shit show mess, but also you slow down the process. You become the bottleneck. Are you the lid? It's John Maxwell, I think, that wrote the book, or one of his leadership books. He wrote many leadership books. In one of them, he talked about the law of the lid. And that's you typically, I believe, where that lid comes from. It's you getting in the way of the how. When all you should be worried about is what are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? Make sure it's worthy. And then figuring out who. Your main job is who. And then, of course, holding that person accountable, making sure they're the right fit, etc. And that's a whole nother podcast of its own. But that person will bring the how. And let me tell you, I built a house, okay? So I bought land, and it's the same thing because I watched myself make this mistake in my home building process. I bought land, and it's the kind of thing where, we had to hire our own architects, our own engineers, our own builder, the whole thing. It was a great process. It was an interesting process, a profitable process, and it was really good. But what I found was what I needed to do was make sure that I understand what are we going to build, why are we building it, and who's going to do it. Well, we were doing a really good job for a while on this, right? So we knew what we wanted to build, why we were building it, and we knew who was going to do it. We, in fact, hired not only the best builder in the area, but a great architect. And then I found that during our meetings with the architect, we started to basically intervene in the how. We would describe, we want this many bedrooms, we want a theater room, we want a game room, et cetera, and we'd get this floor plan. Our job was to say, you know what, there's something that doesn't feel right about this area. Can you please reconfigure the bathroom and the closet? Something doesn't feel right there. We don't like the flow. Great. That would have been our job. But the problem is, sometimes we'd also continue on with, and I think if you just moved this wall and you moved that wall and you did this and you relocated this, no. That's what we had the architect for. See, we had found the who. The who was the architect. All we needed to communicate was, we'd like to adjust that. We want the rooms to feel a little larger. We want the flow to be a little bit more fluid between the bedrooms and the main living areas, or whatever it is that we were sharing feedback on, and then let the architect do the job. The architect would know the how. The architect would understand how it would affect the roof lines and the soffits and just things we don't even know about, and get out of the way. And when we finally started to do that, guess what? The delays started to stop. The things started to flow. We finally got it done. When we were in the way, when we were the lid, when we violated the law of ask what, why, who, but not how, when we violated that law, we were slowing down the process. Excruciating. That's the third law following with you here today. And then finally, 4. It's the law of modeling, proximity, and access. Modeling, proximity, and access is one of the biggest shortcuts ever to success. See, the odds are that you're going to invent something from scratch. It's never been done, a methodology, an approach, etc. that's never been done. The odds are low. The number one thing that I've been really, really strong at has been modeling what has been done by people that have disproportionately impactful results that came before me, getting into proximity with them, and then finally access to their brain, their mind, to their mistakes, so that I wouldn't have to repeat them. The law of modeling, proximity, and access. And if you're saying, hold on, Dan, didn't you say stop playing by rules that don't exist and stop following the masses? Yes, I did. And these are not contradictory. I am not talking about modeling the masses. I'm not talking about being in proximity with the average. I am talking about finding the best in the world. And they might not even be in your industry. They might be. See, in my industry, it might be in yours as well. What's nice is that somebody who's in San Diego serving the San Diego market doesn't necessarily compete with someone serving the Atlanta market. And so if you can find the strongest in Atlanta and share and model, create proximity, access to one another's triumphs and mistakes, and then model what works, avoid what doesn't, you go fast, man. You go fast. In fact, I created an entire organization, a network, let's call it, along with a partner of mine, Kyle Whistle, and Mary Maloney, and we created something where real estate agents from across the country gain modeling, proximity, access to one another, and guess what happens? They grow. Literally, their businesses, the business stories, the case studies we have documented, that dozens, I think of hundreds of people's businesses doubling, quadrupling, quintupling, 10xing is just amazing. But it's really also predictable because they're modeling each other's businesses, or they're modeling some of the best in the world, I should say, who are a part of the network. They have proximity to one another. They have access to each other's secret sauce. What's not happening in that group is people aren't following what the masses do, what the average does, but rather what the absolute best does in any particular discipline within the industry. So you might be in the plumbing business, in the roofing business, you might be in the trades. Odds are that if you found the best in the world, or the best, I should say, at least in the neighboring state, in the neighboring, wherever it is that you don't feel there would be competition, so that the person could just share with you in complete abundance, that is going to help you run fast. I mean, really fast. And if you're in an industry where, your business has a nature to it that is multi-state, regional, national, international, then look outside your industry. First of all, let me just back up. Odds are there's still people in your industry, the very best, they understand that it's not just about what you learn, that it's about execution. And so they're likely going to still share. But if they're not, if you say, no, Dan, in my industry, people just won't do that. Okay, fine. Well, can the dentist learn from the attorney? Can the person in the trucking business learn from someone in some other format of logistics that's built a company bigger than theirs, is ahead of where they are, and who can learn from modeling proximity and access? These are 4 principles that if you follow, if you incorporate them into your DNA, your business DNA, they are going to make an impact on your 2025 that's coming up here around the corner. And depending on when you're listening to this, you're already in it. Now, here's the good news. You could be listening to this in 2027, and the same will apply, because these are universal. These are not opinion. These are not what I think might make a difference. These are proven principles, and I want to make sure to articulate them for you right here. I have one ask for you only. My ask is subscribe and like to this podcast. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, make sure that you're following, liking, so that the algorithm knows to share it with more people that are like-minded, so we can continue to grow and I can continue to bring you great guests, which I have. It when you see the slew and the slate of guests that I have ahead for you in 2025, it's lights out. Make sure you are ready for what I'm bringing, because I'm going full on out. And by the way, the team behind the scenes here making this podcast run, they are the best. I am so thankful. And I hope that you have an amazing 2025.